Very warm good afternoon to all of you, dear students, and welcome to this answer writing module that we have started for UPSC and MPSC. Today, as most of you have already attempted the questions, we have started our discussion with world history. चलिए हम हमारा discussion start करते हैं. What is the whole idea of this series? Every Saturday, we are planning to have these sessions where we will give you 125 marks worth of question paper. Okay. You can write the answers to those questions, and then subsequently we'll have a detailed discussion as to how you can attempt those questions. Okay. Those of you who are relatively fresh, there's no issue with you writing open book also. No problem with that. Okay. As you go along in your preparation, once you have sufficient content, then you will not require the referencing. Okay. See, we should not be unrealistic when it comes to expectations from answer writing. मैं एक सिंपल अगर एनालॉजी आपको दूं, सी सपोज यू आर अ पॉटर, कुम्हार बोलते हैं हम हिंदी मराठी में, ठीक है. एक तो होता है आपके पास में वो मड का होना, और दूसरा होता है उसको शेप करना, यानी उसका स्किल. ठीक है. आंसर राइटिंग पर से इज अबाउट दैट स्किल. ठीक है. एंड गेटिंग द कंटेंट ready is about that mud aspect. These are two different things. Okay? As you advance in your preparation, you will have sufficient content that you can recall from and write the answer. But we will not have that expectation from you to begin with. Okay? Even if you don't have the content immediately, that's okay. But what we want to develop is, if you have the content, can you write the answer then? That is the whole idea. Got it? ठीक है. So even if you read and then frame your answer, that's also okay with me. Absolutely no problem. ठीक है. चलिए आगे बढ़ते हैं. Let's start our discussion for today. So we've started with world history. Now when we write answers for world history in particular or history in general, there are a few things that we must be mindful about. What do we need to remember? There are 7 inputs that go into writing a very good answer. 7 inputs that you must be mindful about. What are these 7 things? First in that is scope of the question. First in that is scope of the question. What do we mean by scope of the question? The question, like for example, there was this first question regarding Treaty of Versailles contained the seed of another conflict. That was the first question that you wrote. Okay. Now that question is giving you a very specific scope. What is that scope about? कि कैसे ट्रीटी ऑफ वर्साइल्स ने नेक्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर जो है वो कॉज किया है. यू हैव टू फर्स्ट आइडेंटिफाई एंड अंडरस्टैंड what is that scope of the question, and your answer has to stay limited to that only. Okay? If you write things that are peripheral to it, tangential to it, UPSC is not going to give you good marks. You'll get just 2 marks or maybe 1.5 marks for a 10-mark answer. Premium in this exam is on understanding the scope of the question and staying within it. So what were the specific provisions in that treaty that laid the groundwork for the next big conflict? We must be able to focus only on that. If you start with World War I में क्या हुआ था and then what Hitler will do in World War II, then that is not going to fetch you marks. How did that treaty result in the next war? That is what you have to stay limited or focused about. Clear, everyone? There was one more question on Arab nationalism and contribution of General Nasser in that idea of Arab nationalism. Okay? Now here what happens is students will write half a page on what is nationalism first. Okay? Is that asked in your question? No. The question is specifically asking about what is Arab nationalism and contribution of a specific personality. अभी आपको नासिर पता नहीं है, you don't know what nationalism, don't worry about that. But you can definitely relate with the idea that there is something very specific that is being asked, and we have to stay limited to that only. That is what we call as the scope of the question. Especially those of you who are just coming fresh out of college or are in final year or something like that. In college times, when we write our university exams, there's a premium on the number of pages that you are writing. Is it not true, largely? So if it's a 5 marker, you write 5 pages and you may get out of out marks. Okay? But that is not the case over here. You write 5 sentences which are worthy, you'll get marks. But you've written 2.5 pages which are outside the scope, you are not going to get marks. First point is clear, everyone. So what do we need to understand? First is scope of the question. Clear? Second is mandate that the question gives us. What is meant by mandate? हर क्वेश्चन में यूपीएससी गिव्स यू अ स्पेसिफिक वर्ड along with a statement. For example, it will tell you to discuss something. Okay, discuss the role of Mahatma Gandhi in India's freedom struggle, for example. So the word discuss over there is what we call as the mandate of the question. Different, faculties have different words for this. कुछ लोग इसको कीवर्ड बोलते हैं. Some people call it tail word also. Name is not important. नाम में क्या रखा है? The important thing is what do we have to do with it? Okay. वो जो वर्ड वहां यूज हो रहा है, whether it is discuss, analyze, elaborate, elucidate, हम सारी लिस्ट देखेंगे, don't worry. That tells you what is the treatment you are going to give to your content of the answer. Let me explain with example. You all like 2 minutes noodles, Maggie, right? We all have that very often. Now that same Maggie can be prepared in 100 different ways. Do you all agree with this? Now the Maggie is the same, but how is it changing? It is changing on the basis of the treatment that we are giving to it. All agree with this? The same thing is applicable over here when we are talking about mandate of the question. So mandate of the question is what kind of treatment we are going to give to that content. The ingredients remain the same. Information base remains the same. But the way we arrange, present it, that changes. And that is what we mean by mandate. Okay? I'll tell you all the mandate words that are asked in history and what is expected of you in those words. But right now, just note that based on the mandate word, slightly the treatment is going to change. So, पहली चीज क्या देखी हमने? Scope of the question. Second is mandate of the question. Okay? Third ingredient for a good answer is writing a effective, brief and crisp introduction. Okay? Whenever we write an answer, it is expected that we write a very brief and crisp one sentence introduction to it. कोई भी मूवी जब हम देखते हैं तो उस मूवी में पहले शुरुआत में एक बिल्डअप होता है before you get into the actual action. Is it not right? If we don't have that build-up, then you will feel something is missing. If we hit the action directly, then you feel a void over there. So ये void ना हो, for that we need what? A very brief and crisp introduction so that the tone for the answer is set. Okay? This makes the answer complete. Introduction in one sentence only. But एक rider है यहाँ पर में. There's a caveat. The rider is that in the exam hall, often time is very short. And sometimes you may have to compromise on the introduction also to complete the paper. That is understandable. But there is something called as ideal and there is something called as practical also. So we must try for the ideal to the extent possible. But in the exam hall, there may be situations where you have to cut down on the answer. There you can directly jump by missing out on introduction, but that is extreme case. Okay. Ideally, you must write a brief introduction for every answer. Clear? Third point clear? So first is, can I hear louder? I'm having so many future as IAS and IPS officers before me. I expect better energy and participation from you all. First thing is scope of the question. Second is understanding the mandate. Third is Crisp, brief introduction. Point number 3. Point number 4 is the real meat of the answer, where you do justice to what has been demanded, and that is the body or content part of your answer. Okay? Now your content, based on your preparation, obviously you will be able to bring content to the address the demand of the question. How to do that? That is another different subject that we'll be talking about. But what should be our approach when presenting the content? First and foremost, our content has to be arranged in a structured and logical manner based on the demand of the question. Okay. Like for example, there was a question on Arab nationalism. It first asked you what is the concept of Arab nationalism, and then it asked you about contribution of Nasser in Arab nationalism. Okay. When we are structuring our answer, we have to give relative and due importance to all the parts of the question. So we first tell the concept, we tell the implications of that concept, and then we come to the specific personality that had been asked. So our content is arranged in a logical manner based on the demand of the question. Okay? So our content is arranged in a flowing logical way. Next is our answer must be laden with perspectives. Okay? What do we mean by perspective? Perspective, जिसको हम हिंदी मराठी में बोलते हैं दृष्टिकोण. ठीक है? A way or approach of looking at something. We are not just reproducing facts. We are lacing our answer with dimensions, perspectives of looking at that demand of the question. This is very crucial. Main stage is not just about your information base. Main stage is about your understanding, your analysis also. Okay? So your answer should not just be a collection of facts. It has to be woven in a perspective, dominated manner. Clear everyone? Okay? Lastly, we need to have substantiation, evidences or examples. देखिए एक बात जैसे if I tell you that Pune is the best city for education in India. Okay? This is a perspective. But if I tell you, unless you have visited Pune or read about Pune, you will not accept this perspective. Will you? Suppose somebody has not heard about Pune. Somebody from Nigeria comes and I tell that person that Pune is the best city in India for education. Will that person from Nigeria necessarily accept it? No. Why should he accept it? To make that person accept what I am saying, I have to provide what? I have to provide some evidence to that perspective. Okay. So what can I say? According to ORG Marks survey, Pune has been ranked as top 3rd destination for higher education in India. When I say this, does that give more credence, authenticity, more weight to what I'm saying? Okay, that is what we mean by evidence. So perspectives have to be supported with evidence. Okay, evidence can be in different form. It can be in the form of data. It can be in the form of facts. It can be in the form of reports. अब ये सिर्फ हिस्ट्री की बात नहीं कर रहे हम, जनरली आंसर राइटिंग में. It can be in the form of committees' recommendations. It can have many different forms. But your answer has to be laden with evidences to support your perspectives. अगर आप evidence नहीं दे रहे हैं तो sufficient weight आपकी आंसर में नहीं आता है. Clear everyone? Like for example, there's another question in your booklet which talks about the apartheid in South Africa and role of Nelson Mandela. Okay? Now, this question, if asked in university, a university student will write a full essay without mentioning any evidence. Nelson Mandela was one of the greatest South African. Okay? He suffered a lot for his people. Right? He was a great leader. You can write like this. Those are just perspectives. They are not supported with what? Evidence. Whatever we say has to be supported with evidence. I'll suggest that you have a look at the answer copies of Miss Shruti Sharma, AIR 1, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Her answers, every single point, after writing every single point, she used to make a triangle with example EG written inside, and she used to back it up with one brief or two crisp examples there. Okay. So for every point, she had at least one example stated. And then there's no, there's no other reason why she has stopped in this. In fact, her story is very interesting. I'll just briefly tell that. She happens to be a close friend of a student of mine. In her first attempt, she had wrongly written her language as Hindi instead of English, and then realized it very late. By that time, nothing could be done about it. And yet she attempted in Hindi, and she was almost there at interview level, though that was not her, language. Okay. Next attempt, she wrote in English and All India rank 1. Why is that so? Because the richness of this aspect. Clear, everyone? That language barrier could not hold her back. Clear? So first is scope, then mandate, then a crisp introduction, and then fourth part is content. Content must be arranged in a flowing manner. It must be laden with perspectives and supported with evidence. Clear up to this point? Okay. Fifth is making your answers different from the competition. Okay. Value adding in your answers. Why do we need to add value to our answers? It's a relative examination, guys. The competition is between you and the next paper that the examiner is going to check. If you have taken slight effort more than the other candidate, that is going to fetch you extra marks, which that candidate is not going to get. And how big a difference can that make? I had a student of mine, his name is Muhammad Hussain. He got Indian Revenue Services. He was expecting IPS, but he got IRS, and he had missed his dream service. If you just see him, you'll feel that, this is a guy tailor-made for IPS, that kind of a personality. Why did he not get the service of his choice? He missed out by just 4 marks. By simply 4 marks, and the service entire career is going to be different. For every 1 mark, on an average, you will see you jump a ranks by 10. There's a jump of 10 ranks. Okay? So if you have 10 marks more in a paper, your rank is going to jump by 100 marks. If you see rank 10, every year you see that just now in a few days time result will be out. You just see the score of rank 10 and rank 100. Rank 10 and rank 100. You will not see a difference of more than 50 marks. Out of 1750 mains and 275 interview, not a difference of 50 marks, and you are either in top 10 or you're beyond 100. Especially in candidates for Maharashtra. Very briefly, I'll just share this thing that I have had inside of me. If you see in terms of the final result, we have a lot of candidates from Maharashtra who clear, but then they're not there in the top 10, top 20. The ranks from Maharashtra are generally concentrated where 200 and beyond, and mostly in that 400 to 600 bracket. The senior candidates will approve of this. Does that happen? If you want to be there in top 10, top 20, then you have to bring that half a mark extra in every answer. Okay, that totals up to 10 marks in one paper. So 100 ranks jump. So 4 GS papers, 10 marks each, you are going to be 400 ranks ahead. Now, how do you do that? How do we add value? Now, every subject is going to have different ways of adding value. In history, for example, you can draw maps, simple maps of world history or map of India, and immediately half a mark gets enhanced. It doesn't happen on the exam day. You have to practice that day in and day out to draw a map in 12 to 14 seconds, India map. If I'll share that over here also. But on my Telegram channel, if you see, I have shared a video of another topper from Indian Forest Service. He used to make a map of India in 14 seconds. Very beautiful map of India in 14 seconds. And world map in about 45 seconds, entire world. And it was a beautiful map. You don't even need that beautiful maps. Even if a basic map you can draw in that pressure, you are going to fetch half a mark to 1 mark more. So that's what you can add value in history. You can bring quotes. While writing answers, there are some themes in history on which repetitively questions are asked. So you can collect a series of quotes, say 25 to 30 quotes on different major topics. And if the question is in that range, you can cite that quote that can add value to your answer, right? So history mein, you can use maps, you can use quotes, you can use opinions of historians. On different topics, you have opinions of standard opinions of historians. You can quote those historians. That can also help you to add weight. So in this manner, with different subjects, you can plan different things for value addition. A little effort now will fetch you that service and rank that you are hoping for. Clear? So this is value addition. Next is presentation. Yes, UPSC examiner is more lenient, but still it's a competition. If your paper is aesthetically more pleasing, then naturally, you are going to fetch extra marks because of that. So the spacing between your paragraphs, the spacing between your lines, the visual aspects, maybe some flowcharts, diagrams, maps that you bring in, that adds to your presentation. Okay. Here, a lot of students have this question that, sir, my handwriting is very poor. Okay. And is this going to have a negative effect on my score? So let me just assure you that UPSC examiner in this sense is a very indulgent examiner. Even if you don't have a beautiful handwriting, as long as it is legible, यानी समझा जा सकता है पढ़ करके, UPSC examiner is ready to entertain with you based on the content that you have provided. Okay, so don't worry about your handwriting, but definitely overall aesthetically your presentation that you should try to improve upon. All right. Last aspect, seventh aspect of the question is conclusion. Conclusion is where examiner is finally going to give you marks. That is like the parting shot that you have with the examiner. This is where you hammer what you have said. So here is an opportunity for you to tell the examiner that I am IAS material, I am IPS material. The way you capture the essence of the question and reinforce what you have said earlier is going to tell volumes about who you are as a person. Conclusion आपकी personality बहुत clearly बताता है. If you're not writing conclusion, it immediately tells the examiner that this person was in a hurry, he could not manage time, so he has just given the information and did not bother to write a conclusion. This is where you show that you can see the larger picture. I'll give you one very simple example of a friend of mine who used to prepare during my preparation years. She always used to have very beautiful one-liners to close her questions. First attempt, she got IFS, that was her first choice. She had written a very beautiful answer on, there was a question on water. This I'm talking about many years ago. There was a question regarding water crisis. And she had beautifully concluded that answer by saying, no, water is life. Without water, human existence is at peril. And then she added something more and concluded that statement over there. Now that one beautiful line, I'm sure, would have fetched her 1 mark more than the competition. It tells the examiner, the person who's checking your paper, that this is a guy who's not clerical stuff. Here is a guy who can see the bigger picture. So make it a point to write good conclusions. We'll see some of them in the model answers also. Okay. So these are the 7 points that we need to remember while writing the answers. Very briefly, from 19th of May over here, we are starting our new batch for UPSC, our foundation course. It's going to be a morning batch which starts at 8 a.m. This is designed for those students who are planning to take UPSC attempt next year, that is 2026. This batch has been designed by very experienced faculty. I was also a part of designing this batch, along with a lot of toppers over the recent years. So this will have 600 plus hours of classroom coaching, test series, study material, and everything that an aspirant basically needs to crack this exam in his or her very first attempt. So those of you who are at that stage, you can definitely think about it. If not, your friends who are planning to, you would certainly like to recommend it to them as well. Do join the Telegram channel of UPSC Guide. Today's PDF and other such material is being shared over there. So you can scan, this will be there on YouTube. So you can just pause the screen and scan and join our Telegram channel also. Okay, those of you who are, you can do it right away too. This Telegram channel will have the updates for all our activities. Okay, we are planning many things in the days and weeks to come, including interaction with a lot of all India, ranker toppers. So do stay tuned on this Telegram channel. All right. Chali, let's go ahead. Okay. Now next comes the mandate words. Now, if you analyze the PYQs of history, these are the mandate words that typically UPSC uses for history questions. Now, mind you, there are quite a few others that UPSC has used with other subjects also. But history के लिए जो words use होते हैं, वो generally ये है, and I'll urge you to maybe just write it down somewhere, scribble it in your note, because these are the words that have been used thus far. Nothing is beyond this history के लिए, at least. Okay. So, what are these words and what is expected when we have these mandate words in the question? The first mandate word that is often used is discuss. सबसे ज्यादा कॉमन जो मैंडेट वर्ड होगा वो डिस्कस होगा. ठीक है. सो डिस्कस द रोल ऑफ महात्मा गांधी इन इंडिया's freedom struggle, or discuss the role of early revolutionaries in our freedom struggle, something of that sort. This is the most commonly used mandate word. और ये सबसे आसान होता है सारे ही मैंडेट वर्ड्स में, क्योंकि इसका जो रेमिट है वो सबसे ब्रॉड है. जब भी आप किसी क्वेश्चन में डिस्कस देखते हैं तो आप ये समझ लीजिए, इट्स लाइक द एग्जामिनर हैज गिवन यू अ फुल एंड ओपन ग्राउंड टू प्ले. द एग्जामिनर हैज नॉट रिड्यूस्ड द स्कोप ऑफ दैट क्वेश्चन. Whenever there's a discuss based question, you are expected to engage in all the different dimensions of the issue that is being asked in that question. Okay. What are the different debates? What are the pros and cons? What are the, benefits, disadvantages? What are, the merits and demerits? Anything that is associated with that area of question is fair game for us. Okay. So discuss में आपको उस स्टेटमेंट के सारे ही इंट्रिकेसीज को ओपन अप करने का स्कोप होता है, एंड दैट इज व्हाट मेक्स डिस्कस क्वेश्चंस इजियर एज कंपेयर्ड टू अदर्स. ठीक है. एट द एंड ऑफ दिस, once you have completed the body part of discuss, then you are also expected to write a brief comment of your own also based on the discussion that has gone by. Like for example, if the question was about discuss the role of Mahatma Gandhi in India's freedom struggle, so we will talk about how Mahatma Gandhi structured and reorganized the Indian National Congress, how he made the freedom struggle a mass movement, and he brought in women, minorities, tribals, Dalits, so on and so forth. Then how he was able to take the movement in its upswing and downswing phases, how he was able to negotiate with the British, he himself being a barrister, having that experience of South Africa, so on and so forth. So we bring out all the aspects associated with Gandhiji's role in the freedom struggle. And then towards the closure, we can then conclude with a comment about how Gandhiji uniquely handled this leadership position and how somebody else would not have been able to do it as effectively. So give a personal touch over there towards the end. Your understanding or your takeaway about what has been discussed. Clear? So this is how we deal with discuss type of questions. Second is assess. Okay? Assess karna. What do we mean by assess something? Assess basically means that you have been given a proposition and you are supposed to be the judge arbiter as to whether that proposition is appropriate or no. ठीक है. जैसे कि इमेजिन कीजिए कि आप जज हैं किसी केस में और आपके सामने सारे एविडेंसेस प्रेजेंट किए जा रहे हैं, एंड एट द एंड ऑफ इट you are coming to some conclusion based on what has been presented to you. That is what is assess. Okay. Say for example, if we say assess the role of Muslim League in partition of Indian subcontinent. ठीक है, ऐसा क्वेश्चन आपसे पूछा गया. स्टेटमेंट क्या है? मुस्लिम लीग का रोल इन पार्टीशन. मैंडेट क्या है? एसएस आपको मैंडेट दिया गया है. सो व्हाट डू? वी टेक दैट स्टेटमेंट and then based on evidence that we are presenting, we will come to a conclusion as to how Muslim League was fairly and squarely responsible for the partition of India. Clear everyone? You have to present it in such a manner that we are starting out neutrally. आपको एक स्टेटमेंट दिया है, assess the role of Muslim League. We don't start upfront that Muslim League was responsible. And this is why. No. We start reverse. We present the case of how Muslim League met the Viceroy in 1906 and asked for separate electorates. How Muslim League started to use communalism for increasing its political representation. We will talk about how Muhammad Ali Jinnah came up with the two-nation theory and passed the Pakistan resolution in 1940. How he in 1946 election made it a referendum for Pakistan. And then based on all of this, we can come to the conclusion that Muslim League was responsible for the partition of the country. Okay? This is how we deal with assess type of questions. Clear everyone what is meant by assess over here? 2. Evidence based, we arrive at the conclusion. Okay? We arrive at it. We don't state it upfront. Okay? जी, sequentially उसको बताना है, present करना है. Okay? 2. 3. Justify or substantiate. Justify or substantiate. ये दोनों थोड़े similar हैं, both of these keywords. What is meant by justify and substantiate? Justify and substantiate में you are given a statement, okay, which you have to obviously accept as right or true, and then based on evidence you have to show how it is right or valid or true. Okay, here you are not supposed to critically engage with it. Okay, you're not supposed to disprove it per se, you are supposed to show how that is right. So that's why we call it justify or substantiate. Based on again providing evidence, we are going to show how that statement is right. Say, to give you an example, say for example we say Bhagat Singh's ideology marked a qualitative improvement in the ideology of revolutionary freedom fighters. ठीक है? Justify और substantiate. यहां जो स्टेटमेंट हमको दिया गया है कि भगत सिंह का जो थॉट है ये एक नेक्स्ट लेवल पर ले जाता है रेवोल्यूशनरी फ्रीडम फाइटर्स के थॉट को. जस्टिफाई और सब्सटेंशिएट, दिस इज व्हाट वी हैव बीन टोल्ड. सो वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू क्रिटिकली एंगेज एंड देन से रिफ्यूट दैट कि नो भगत सिंह आइडियोलॉजी डिड नॉट टेक. क्वेश्चन इज क्लियरली टेलिंग अस बाय सेइंग जस्टिफाई और सब्सटेंशिएट दैट यस दिस इज करेक्ट. This is not wrong per se. Now, what you are supposed to do is, based on your understanding, you are supposed to bring in evidence as to how that is so. Okay? Now, can you tell me some evidences, some examples that we can bring in? Many of you are appearing for prelims this year. How can we say that Bhagat Singh's ideology marked an improvement in the ideology of revolutionary freedom fighters? How is Bhagat Singh different from his predecessors? HRA या उससे पहले अनुशीलन समिति है, जुगांतर है ना. महाराष्ट्र में भी बहुत सारे हमारे यहाँ पर मेरे चाफेकर ब्रदर्स थे, सावरकर थे. अब ये सारे रेवोल्यूशनरी जो फ्रीडम फाइटर्स थे, इनमें भगत सिंह जो है वो एक डिफरेंट प्लेन पे हमको नजर आते हैं. हाउ कैन वी जस्टिफाई दैट? हाउ कैन वी सब्सटेंशिएट दैट? व्हाट कैन वी से अबाउट इट? What can we present over here to justify it. Now, this question obviously is for those students who are already, thick in preparation, who are taking prelims this year. How can we justify? Yes. Language is not a barrier. English, Hindi, Marathi, no problem. Yes. Excellent. That's the first and most logical point. He is not just about terrorizing the British administration in India. He talks about a mass uprising, not about individual heroic action. Okay, so that is one point that we can say. Essence I got. इसमें थोड़ा elaboration होगा, but the essence is right. That is one point that we can say. Does it show improvement over others? Is it a wider ideology? Yes, it is. One. Second, what can we say? See, point is right, but you see, we are not talking about ideology over there. Chandrasekhar's actions also influenced. Others were also very heroic, very daring. Khudiram Bose, Prafulla Chakki, these people attacked the viceroy directly. Okay? But the question is not about heroism or influence on the youth. The question is ideologically, what is the qualitative change that we are seeing? So one thing our friend has mentioned, that is absolutely right. Second thing, Bhagat Singh talks about involvement of other classes from the society in the freedom struggle. He talks about workers, he talks about peasants. Earlier revolutionaries were just small groups, secret groups who were carrying out their daring attacks. Okay? Bhagat Singh says कि हमारे इन attacks से सिर्फ काम नहीं चलेगा. We have to involve other sections of the society. So can you see first revolutionary who was talking about all these things now? Number two. Okay? Number three, and I'll just give three dimensions. There are many more. Third aspect. Bhagat Singh, see 1920s and especially in the decade of 1910s and then in 1920s, we are going to see rise of communalism in India. 1906 Muslim League ban jati hai. British start to exploit that divide and rule factor. ठीक है? Communalism starts to peak. 1924 we see a lot of riots in Delhi and Punjab area. ठीक है? उसी टाइम के अंदर में भगत सिंह extols the idea of secularism. Okay? Before Bhagat Singh, the revolutionaries were divided along communal lines. Bhagat Singh is a guy who is not just personally committed to the idea of secularism, but he also extols that value in the freedom struggle. एक एग्जाम्पल भगत सिंह के लाइफ से जस्ट बताता हूं. विपिन चंद्रा ने कोट किया है अपनी किताब में. भगत सिंह के गुरु थे लाला लाजपत राय, एक्सट्रीमिस्ट लीडर, और लाला लाजपत राय को वो बहुत मानते थे. ठीक है, लेकिन एक पॉइंट ऐसा आया जब कम्युनल पॉलिटिक्स भारत में पीक करने लगा तो भगत सिंह को लगा कि लाला लाजपत राय भी कम्युनल पॉलिटिक्स की तरफ जा रहे हैं. एट दैट टाइम भगत सिंह हैड very openly criticized Lala Lajpat Rai also, who was like a lifetime idol for him. What does that show? It shows commitment to the idea of secularism. Can we see this at a different plane after this also? 3. Fourth, मोह आवरत नहीं है म्हणून चौथा पॉइंट सांगून जातो. ठीक है. When Bhagat Singh threw bombs in the legislative assembly, he knew Saunders का murder पहले इन्होंने किया है. It meant arrest. It meant a capital punishment, most likely. Yet he did that. Why does he do? Because he says, our action alone, gun wala action, bomb wala cult, is not going to bring freedom. What do we need? We need masses ka involvement, and for that we are doing this spectacular action. Before this, the revolutionaries, they used to vanish from that scene. But Bhagat Singh, he stayed over there, got himself arrested, to gain traction for that issue. Can you see the qualitative difference over there also? So these are just 4 perspectives that I brought about. Got that point? So can we justify the idea that Bhagat Singh's ideology is qualitatively taking the revolutionary ideology to a different level? Clear? To discuss, assess, justify, substantiate are similar. Comment. Comment type of question. Specifically expects you to give your opinion or view on the thing that is being discussed. Okay, so this is the opinion based question, even if it may not upfront appear to be so. Even if it is not appearing to be so, if the word comment is used, so after giving a due analysis, you are expected to give your opinion. Clear? Okay. Next few are similar: explain, elucidate, and throw light on. What do we do when something is to be explained? When something is to be explained, if something is complex, we break it down into different parts. जैसे एक क्वेश्चन आज भी सिमिलर लाइंस पर है, इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन हैड टू स्टार्ट इन इंग्लैंड फर्स्ट. ठीक है, फुल स्टॉप. अगर उसमें एक्सप्लेन कहा जाए, आपको स्टेटमेंट कह रहा है इट हैड टू स्टार्ट इन इंग्लैंड फर्स्ट एंड देन आफ्टर दैट एक्सप्लेन. सो व्हाट डू वी हैव टू डू? We have to break that statement down into its different parts and show why is it so. In simple words, we try to explain simple, जैसे हम explain word use करते हैं बोली भाषा में. Something complex, we try to make it simple and easy. Here it is not about opinion, not about your view. It is only about breaking down and simplifying. ठीक है? Similar is elucidate. Elucidate means what? LUC is a root word which means light. Okay? LUC means light. Elucidate means very similar to this, throw light on. Okay? Something that is hidden, something that is not well understood, something that is not clear. हम हिंदी मराठी में कहते हैं ना कि प्रकाश डालिए. So something that is not clear, we try to bring it out. That is basically elucidate. Okay, so the question in such cases will always be about some lesser known dimension, aspect, or something that is not very prominently known, and for that the examiner will ask you to elucidate or throw light on. For example, throw light on the role of women in tribal uprisings of India. What is their contribution? That is not very well known. So they may ask you to throw light upon it. Did you understand this? जी? Reporting type as in something that is not known, उसको आपको with evidence बताना है. यहां पर आपको analyze नहीं करना, comment नहीं करना. जो चीज नहीं जानी गई है, उसको हमको प्रकाश ज्योत में मराठी में कहते हैं ना, उसको लेकर के आना है. That is what it means. ठीक है? Elucidate, throw light on, and similarly highlight also. They are all in the same vein. Next is elaborate. As the name suggests, elaboration. अब बाकी के relatively easy है. Elaborate means what? You have to give more details. That's it. Okay? Elaboration is about adding details regarding the statement that has been asked. Examine is similar to assess. Examine is what? Similar to assess. परीक्षण करना. Okay. Something has been told to you. Now you go into the evidence and check how far that is right or valid. Okay. That is examine. Same is evaluate also. Then comes analyze. Analyze. By the way, it's useful to simultaneously work on your language competence when you appear for this exam. कितना ही हम कहें, if you are good with your language competence, जो भी आपका medium है, if it's Marathi, then with Marathi, Hindi, English, whatever it is, because you are going to articulate your ideas, and if you don't have good language competence, then you might have content here, but it does not translate on the paper. Okay? And for that, vocabulary is very useful. Okay? I'll suggest that you have a look at a PDF called as Root Words in English. इसको लिख लीजिए. Root words in English. Just search that on Google. Root words in English. You'll get many PDFs. There are a few which will have about 200 to 300 root words. Make it a point to, download it. If possible, just print and keep it on your desk. English is a language derived from Latin and Greek. And the root words from those languages are used to build many words in English. So if you know the root word, it's very easy to absorb new words in your lexicon, in your diary. Okay, I'll give you one example over here itself. This word here, analyze, comes from two words, two root words, ana and lysis. Lysis का मतलब होता है break and ana का मतलब होता है down. Okay? Combining those two, we get the word analysis. Okay? So what is meant by analysis? To break down that is complex into simple form. So if they say the same question, the industrial revolution had to start in England first, full stop, analyze. What is expected of you? You try to give as many heads as possible in the given limitation of space and word, and try to make that into a simple form by breaking it down into social, political, economic, geographical, technological, so on and so forth dimensions. That is analysis. Clear everyone? एक और example देता हूं just to make my point clear. There's a root word called as Khan, C-A-R-N, Khan. Have you heard about this by any chance? Khan as a root word? Somewhat. Khan means flesh. मराठी हिंदी में जिसको बोलते हैं मांस. कान से ही देखिए कितने वर्ड्स बनते हैं. कार्निवोरस. Vor, V-O-R, vor means to eat. Khan means flesh. ठीक है. Carnivorous. ठीक है. Carnal. Carnal means what? Related to body. Carnal. Incarnation, अवतार. Reincarnation, पुनर्जन्म. ठीक है. अब वोर से एग्जांपल दे रहा हूं, मैं ऐसे कहीं दे सकता हूं. वोर, वी-ओ-आर, वोर मीन्स टू ईट. डिवोर मीन्स पूरी तरीके से खा जाना. कम्स फ्रॉम द सेम रूट वर्ड वोर. अब दो रूट वर्ड्स पता है, मैंने आपको यहां पर ही आई हैव गिवन यू 10 डिफरेंट ऑलमोस्ट वर्ड्स क्रिएटेड बाय दिस वन वर्ड ओनली. एम्बुल सुना है आपने? एम्बुल वर्ड को याद आ रहा है इससे? एम्बुलेंस. एम्बुल मीन्स टू मूव समथिंग. एम्बुलेंस उससे है. सर्कम एम्बुलेशन, प्रदक्षिणा. सर्कम is circum basically, and ambul means to move. Circumambulation is pradakshina. Som is a root word for sleep. Insomnia सुना है? जिसको नींद नहीं आती है उस कंडीशन को कहते हैं insomnia. Som means sleep. अब som और ambul इन दोनों को जब हम कंबाइन करते हैं, som means what? Sleep. Ambul means to move. दोनों को जब कंबाइन करते हैं तो बनता है somnambulist. Who's a somnambulist? Will be called as a somnambulist. अब लॉजिक है. Who's? नहीं. Somnambulist. रात्रि नहीं आला ना, झोप आ लिए थे. Okay? Somnambulist. Will be a somnambulist. A person who walks in sleep is called what? Somnambulist. Som and ambul. And all of these are from that 300 root words that I'm talking about. Got my point, what I'm trying to say? Even if you don't use them, you'll be reading a lot of these words in the newspaper, editorials, articles. It will make your job easy. All right. चलिए last. Critically examine, discuss, evaluate. ये तो सब हमको पता ही था. Examine, discuss, evaluate. Simple है. Whenever we have the word critically attached to it, it expects that you will neutrally write down everything and then give your assessment or opinion on that statement. Okay? Critically, जब भी word आएगा, whether it is examine, analyze, evaluate, whatever the case may be, you follow what is to be done, but also add up your final opinion on that. ठीक है? That is critically analyze, evaluate, वगैरह वगैरह. Right? चलिए क्वेश्चन स्टार्ट करते हैं. पहला क्वेश्चन जो है वो हमारा वो है ट्रीटी ऑफ वर्साइल्स पर. ठीक है. ट्रीटी ऑफ वर्साइल्स contained the seeds of a future conflict. Elaborate. नहीं, आर्ग्यूमेंट देने के बाद में फिर आप ओपिनियन देंगे. ओपिनियन डायरेक्टली नहीं देना आपको कभी भी. ओके? बिकॉज इफ यू डायरेक्टली गिव योर ओपिनियन, देन दैट डज नॉट होल्ड वाटर. When you present your arguments and then at the end you give your opinion, okay, this reason, and then this is the final comment or opinion, then that adds up. Last के अंदर में. Yes. Got this? Clear everyone? Okay. First question. Read the question. Treaty of Versailles contained the seeds of a future conflict. Elaborate. What is the scope of the question? Is it only Treaty of Versailles? See, understand. First step क्या था हमारा? Scope था ना? 7 steps. First, get the scope right. Is the question only about Treaty of Versailles? No. It is more specific. Okay? Treaty of Versailles mein there might be 20 points that you have studied. Out of those 20 points, there will be 6 to 7 points which actually were responsible for the next war. Okay? So the question is not about the entirety of it. Okay? The question is specifically about how it led to the next conflict. That is the scope of the question. Clear everyone? Okay? So the mistake that we make, especially those of you who are transitioning towards state services from the old pattern, if anybody is of that, from that flow. So what we generally try to do is, we have read Treaty of Versailles, we know 20 points, whatever we know about Treaty of Versailles, we write down. Okay? That was not what was asked. The question is specific. Okay? So that is the scope of the question. What is the mandate? What is the mandate word given here? Elaborate. Which means what? We have to give more details about how this is true. Elaboration. This is true. We just have to add more detailing to it. Clear? Okay. So first step is done. We have identified the scope. We now understand what is the? Yes, because it is elaborate. Okay? Elaborate here is an indication for you. The examiner is saying कि ये है. ठीक है? इस पर आपको माथापच्ची नहीं करना है, whether this is right or no. How it is the case, you have to give us the details of it. How this is right, that you have to show. ठीक है? Clear? Clear everybody? You don't have to tell Treaty of Versailles जो है वो Versailles के पैलेस में साइन हुआ, वहां पर में ये आए थे, वो सारी डिटेलिंग इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है. What we need elaboration about is what were the provisions that led to the next conflict. Clear? Okay. Now, introduction in one sentence very briefly. Now, I'll tell you a trick over here. How can you write crisp introduction? Introduction लिखने में गलती बच्चों से ये हो जाती है कि they go way too behind. Okay? Go beyond the scope and try to bring in unnecessary stuff. So the trick to that is, whatever is the core of the question, here Treaty of Versailles is the core of the question. Okay? Make that as your first word or first few words. Start your answer compulsorily with the Treaty of Versailles. इससे क्या हो जाएगा? You will not go into any unnecessary details. Okay? The Treaty of Versailles, into bracket we'll write 1919, was expected to be a long-lasting peace, but its harsh provisions sowed the seed for the next round of conflict. Full stop. Okay? And then we go into the detailing. Did we set the tone of the answer? Okay? One very simple sentence, but आगे जो आने वाला है उसका एक base create किया हमने. Clear everyone? So the trick is, identify the core of the question and make that as your first word or phrase. ठीक है? चलिए इसके बाद अगले इस पर चलते हैं हम लोग. Next is the meat of your answer, the real part of it. What is the body? What are the points that we are going to share over here? So Treaty of Versailles contained the seeds of a future conflict. How did it have a seed for future conflict? Treaty of Versailles. अब इसमें क्या points? अब जो freshers हैं, so you don't get bothered as you read, your content will be built about it. I'm just sharing what all points we can write about here. What all points we can say? Treaty of Versailles, number one, was a dictated peace. Okay. What is it? It's a dictated peace. Inverted commas में हम इसको लेंगे. Dictated peace का मतलब क्या था? When the German delegation had come, they were humiliated and not even given an opportunity to say anything. They were just given a dotted line on which they had to sign. Now, is that a humiliation for any country? You are deciding the fate of that country, and a country as powerful as Germany, before the World War I, apart from Britain, next only to Britain, Germany was in terms of its economy, in terms of its industrial advancement. Now, just 4 years down the line, the Germany's leaders are being forced to sign without even uttering a single word. That's why it is called as what? A dictated peace. So it was a humiliation. Did that in a way contribute to the next round? Can we say that? One. So it was a dictated peace. Number two, second point. अच्छा, ये जो मैं आपको inverted commas में बोल रहा हूं, these are keywords. ये याद रखना है आपको. Every subject and within that every topic has some keywords. When you utter that keyword, when you write that keyword, it tells the examiner that this is a candidate जिसने तगड़ा preparation किया है. In very less space, in just 2 words, when I say dictated piece, जिसको पता है वो समझ जाता है what I want to say. I don't have to give the entire detail that the delegation was forced to sign, they were not given an opportunity to speak. All of that detailing is not required. Dictated piece includes all of that. Okay. So a smart UPSC and now state services aspirant must collect keywords related to every topic. Clear? Okay. So that's keyword number one. Keyword number two that we can talk about is war guilt. Okay. War guilt. Germany alone was forced to accept what? War guilt. Means what? अब देखिए, war guilt मैंने बोल दिया, examiner को पता है what I want to say. Means what? Germany alone was responsible for World War I and not any other power. Germany was forced to accept this. Okay? Actually, France and Britain were equally responsible. Yes, Germany in a way catalyzed it. Germany initiated a few things, but it wasn't as if others are absolved. They were also equally responsible. But यहाँ force किसको किया जा रहा है? Only Germany. Second keyword that can come in is war guilt. Okay. Third thing that we can talk about is territorial realignment. Another keyword, territorial realignment. क्या किया था इस ट्रीटी ने? Alsace and Lorraine, these provinces were taken away from Germany and given to whom? Alsace and Lorraine were given to France. Other territories they were given to elsewhere. So there were many other small places जैसे यूपेन, मालमेडी, पोलिश कॉरिडोर, जर्मनी के बहुत सारे पीसेस को डिसमेंबर करके नेबरिंग कंट्रीज को दे दिया था. So can you see territorial realignment? Now, is that not humiliating to any country that your territories are being snatched and given to other countries? Number three. Okay. One more Saar Valley was also taken away, which was rich in coal and iron reserves. So territorial realignment हम बोल सकते हैं. 3. Fourth thing that we can talk about over here is Germany's armed forces were emasculated. Okay. Germany was one of the most powerful army before World War I. 5 लाख से घटा करके उनके soldiers 1 lakh का cap लगा दिया. They can't have more than that. One. Number 2, forceful recruitment जो जर्मनी में होता था, जैसे you have in Israel now in South Korea, everybody has to serve a term in the army. So Germany had that system. Okay? इसको drafting भी कहते हैं. There's another word also for that. So that system was there in Germany. Forcefully it was stopped. Okay? Germany was very advanced in its navy and Britain was always concerned about German navy. Britain का एक अलिखित रूल था दोस्तों. Since Britain is an island and a small one, so they were always apprehensive about a big naval attack on Britain. इसलिए ब्रिटेन ने एक रूल बनाया था कि all of Europe's navy on one side and British navy on the other side, we must have equal number of ships and sailors. That was Britain's rule, because that is how they could protect themselves, the only way. Okay, and that is why Napoleon never dared to go and attack Britain on its soil, because of this rule. But Germany had upset this. Germany had massively scaled up its navy, and that balance was disturbed. So at the end of World War I, all of Germany's vessels, and especially its U-boats, or modern day what we call submarines, they were taken away and given to whom? None other than Britain. Okay? Is that not a humiliation? Okay. Fifth, after this, all of Germany's colonies, its special rights in China, okay, all the treaties that it had signed with its other friends, everything was snatched away. Okay. Is this an effect on its sovereignty, impinging on its sovereignty? Obviously it is. Because of all of this, Germany's economy went in a huge crisis. Unemployment, lack of jobs, indemnity. I missed one point. Indemnity, another keyword. 6,500. इसको लिख के रखिए if you did not write in your answer. 6,500 million pounds. 6,500 million pounds of indemnity. Indemnity मतलब नुकसान भरपाई. Germany had to pay to the victorious powers. ठीक है, इस सारे का आप देखिए, इंडस्ट्रियल एरिया ले रहे हैं, सारा फर्टाइल एरिया ले रहे हैं, वॉर गिल्ड भी लाद रहे हैं, कॉलोनीज भी छीन लिया है और बोल रहे हैं इतना पैसा भी दो. ठीक है, दिस क्रिएटेड अ वेरी टेरेबल इकोनॉमिक सिचुएशन इन जर्मनी. एंड इन दिस सिचुएशन, व्हेन देयर इज होपलेसनेस, पीपल लुक फॉर व्हाट? दे लुक फॉर अ मसाया. इंग्लिश में मसाया, हिंदी में हमारे मसीहा. हु इज अ मसीहा? A person who says, don't worry, हम है ना, ठीक है, I will get you out of this situation. In the first place, when situation is horrible, if you see, just if you go back to your life and you go back to the most crisis or traumatic kind of a thing that you have experienced in family or in your friend circle, you will see in a crisis situation, people generally don't, or they are not able to think. So anybody who takes up leadership over there, that okay, don't worry, I will handle this. Otherwise, good thinkers also, they outsource the job. Okay, he's saying he's taking the responsibility. I am not courageous enough. Let him take the responsibility. I am only going to support. Herd mentality सुना है आपने? ठीक है, crisis situation में herd mentality बहुत high होती है. Germany had that crisis, and Hitler became that shepherd who used it to his advantage, leading to another world war. 7 points I told to you. Those 7 points, can they show that seeds were sown in the Treaty of Versailles for the second round? All agree with this? 150 words है हमारे पास आंसर करने के. Okay, the space is fairly constricted. 150 words. क्वेश्चन ही अगर 3 बार रिपीट कर लिया तो 50 वर्ड वैसे ही हो जाते हैं. Okay? So the space is very limited. Okay, 7 points for a 10 marker and 13 points for a 15 marker. This is generally good enough for us to fetch good marks. क्लियर एवरीवन? ठीक है, एक आंसर लिख सकते हैं आप इस तरीके से. ओके, चलिए नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन देखते हैं. व्हाट इज द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन? द डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ राइट्स ऑफ मैन marks the transition of France from absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy. Declaration of Rights of Man marks the transition of France from absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy. ठीक है? What was this Declaration of Rights of Man? During French Revolution, the freedom fighters, or the revolutionaries at that time, that's a more appropriate word, the revolutionaries came up with a draft document which spoke about some specific rights for the people of France. Okay? That document became the preamble to the constitution of France that they drafted. जैसे हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में भी एक प्रीएम्बल है, हमारा प्रीएम्बल क्या करता है? It gives us the vision. Okay, what kind of a state do we want to create here in our country? It's a vision document. So the origin of that is in the French Revolution. Okay, the idea per se. Okay, so that document, which is rights of man wala jo charter hai, that gives the vision of the French revolutionaries. Now this document gave certain rights which ended the absolute monarchy of France and transformed it into a constitutional republic to begin with. Okay, now since this is a more deeper level question, so I'll not go into technicalities. I'll just tell you an overview so that everybody, because people are at different level of preparation, you have a sense of what we are talking about. Okay, there are two concepts over here: absolute monarchy and we have constitutional monarchy. Absolute monarchy is Shivagamini wala system. Remember Shivagamini? बाहुबली क्या? मेरा वचन ही है शासन. My word is the law. ठीक है? That was the kind of system that was there in Europe and also fairly in other parts of the world. Absolute monarchy में दो features होती हैं, इसको याद रखिएगा. Absolute monarchy has two features. Number one, the ruler claims divine right to rule. Point number one, divine right to rule. दैवी अधिकार जिसको हम कहेंगे ना, डिवाइन राइट टू रूल. मतलब क्या? गॉड हैज अपॉइंटेड. इसे मुगल्स कहते थे ना, हम क्या है? जिल्ले इलाही, शैडो ऑफ गॉड ऑन अर्थ. ठीक है. द चाइनीज रूलर्स, द चिंग डायनेस्टी, दे यूज्ड टू कॉल देमसेल्व्स एज सन ऑफ द सन गॉड. ऐसे हर जगह पर में वी हैव सूर्यवंशीज, चंद्रवंशीज एंड मेनी सच आइडियाज अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड. दिस इज कैरेक्टरिस्टिक ऑफ एब्सोल्यूट मोनार्की. एब्सोल्यूट मोनार्की में क्या होता है? पॉइंट नंबर वन, डिवाइन राइट टू रूल. सेकेंड पॉइंट, all power concentrated. Point number two, all power concentrated in the hands of the ruler. All power concentrated in the hands of the ruler. Okay. So this was the system that we had in Europe, especially in France. 16-17 century आते आते 16-17 century आते आते we see that in Europe there is a movement called as Enlightenment. प्रबोधन काल मराठी में हम उसको बोलते हैं. Enlightenment gave new political ideas to Europe. ठीक है. Ideas about individual rights, freedoms, those were born during the period of Enlightenment. इन आइडियाज से इंस्पायर होकर के फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशनरीज, they fought against their own ruler, that is Louis the 16th, and they, to begin with, wanted to end his rule but keep him as a titular ruler. Okay, जैसे ब्रिटेन के अंदर में we have constitutional monarchy, there is a constitution, there is a ruler, the ruler is only titular, he does not have any specific rights as such, he is just a signing authority or a rubber stamp per se. So on similar lines, France wanted to first build what? A constitutional monarchy. और इसके लिए वो सबसे पहले क्या लेकर आते हैं? This charter or this document of rights of man. Okay. What did the rights of man, talk about? Did you all get the model answer also? You've not got the model answers? Okay. You'll get a soft copy as well as a physical copy. We'll write down the few points there. What does the right of man talk about? Number one, it talks about the concept of sovereignty of general will. Sovereignty of general will. Again, a keyword. What do we mean by this? Sovereignty of general will. Popular sovereignty basically. यानी क्या? मेरा वचन ही है शासन, नहीं चलेगा. बात किसकी चलनी चाहिए? जो जनता चाहती है. Popular sovereignty. Where is that idea coming from in Europe? It is coming through this document called as right of man. Okay. So अगर जनता के पास में सत्ता होगी तो naturally absolute monarchy रही क्या फिर? No. Point number one. Point number two, individual rights and freedoms. Individual rights and freedoms. Dash, what kind of rights? Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. Freedom of religion. Freedom of speech. Freedom of religion. अच्छा आप बोलेंगे सर फ्रांस में तो it's not a multi-religious society largely. So why do we need freedom of religion? There they had Protestants and Catholics. Very good. Okay. So Protestants and Catholics, they had been fighting in Europe for a very long time. एक 30 years war हुआ था दोस्तों in 17th century. For 30 years, Europeans were killing each other on issue of what? Protestants and Catholics, largely. बहुत सारे और थे, लेकिन major issue was this. ये बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है. साइड नोट पे बता रहा हूं. यूरोपियंस कितने अलग अलग चीजों को लेकर लड़ते रहे. If you see their case study, okay. First they fought about religion, crusades with the Muslim world. Then they fought about Protestants and Catholics for another 300-400 years. तो पहले रिलीजन बेस्ड वॉर्स, फिर सेक्ट बेस्ड वॉर्स. जब ये सब कुछ खत्म हुआ, देन दे फॉट वॉर्स बेस्ड ऑन नेशनलिज्म. वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 एंड वर्ल्ड वॉर 2 आर द पिनिकल्स. सो नेशनलिज्म पर लड़ाइयां हुई, और जब नेशनलिज्म की लड़ाइयां खत्म हुई, तब नेक्स्ट पॉइंट ऑफ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट क्या था? आइडियोलॉजी, कैपिटलिज्म वर्सेस कम्युनिज्म, राइट? So for last almost 1000 years, you see that Europe was fighting on some idea or the other. इसीलिए यूरोपियन यूनियन को जो है वो नोबेल पीस प्राइज दिया गया कि भैया तुम्हारे आने के बाद से जो है वो चीजें थोड़ी सी स्टेबलाइज हुई है. We have not had as dangerous warfare as we had earlier. Now the Ukraine war again creates that specter. Okay, fortunately it has remained limited and localized, but it is again a reflection of what Europeans have been doing. ठीक है, क्लियर एवरीवन? ओके. तो क्या क्या लिखा हमने राइट्स ऑफ मैन के अंदर में? सॉवरेंटी, जनरल विल, ओके, इंडिविजुअल राइट्स एंड फ्रीडम्स, ओके. देन टैक्सेस, टैक्सेस बेस्ड ऑन पर्सन्स इनकम, टैक्सेस बेस्ड ऑन पर्सन्स इनकम. नाउ बिफोर द रेवोल्यूशन in France, there were 3 sections in the society. They were called as estates. 3 estates. The first estate was the clergy, religious priests and all. Second estate was aristocracy, सामंत वर्ग जिसको हम कहते हैं, ठीक है? And the third estate was all other people, which included businessmen, common people, peasants, everybody. The first 2 estates were only 2% of the population. Okay, 2%. Rest all were 98%. Okay. But material wealth, 65% of the material wealth was with the 2%, top 2%. Okay. And this 2% did not pay any taxes. All the taxes burden had to be paid by the third estate. Okay. So आज जो हमारे यहाँ पे concept है ना progressive taxation का, वो कहाँ से आया है? That is also coming from this idea. Clear everyone? ठीक है. So 3, last point, the French ruler, उस वक्त में लुई द 16 था, the French ruler will have to abide by the Estates General. Estates General was the parliament-like body. ठीक है. Whatever decision is taken by the Estates General, the French ruler has to abide by that. Okay. Clear everyone? Okay, so this was a slightly more technical question, which perhaps you might have not read about earlier. So I just gave you an overview of it. Chaliye, next question. Napoleon's victories on the battlefield were short-lived, but the reforms and institutions lasted much longer. Discuss. Okay. What is the question's scope? Let's go step by step. Scope क्या है? What can we say is the scope of the question? Only institutions, reforms and institutions. Okay. So the question is clearly making a contrast. We are not supposed to write everything that we know about Napoleon in this answer. What are we supposed to focus on? We are supposed to focus on only why his empire did not last, but yet his reforms and institutions, lasted, beyond his time also. Okay. The first part is, okay, so how can we write the introduction for this? Step number 1, scope समझ में आया आपको क्वेश्चन का? Scope is clear? Okay. Step number 2 is introduction to the answer. In one sentence, we are going to tell the essence of the question. How can we say that? How many of you have written the answer for this? Some of you have written, no? Okay. How can we introduce this? Okay, but thoda or specificity.
We just mentioned like how he emerged from the French Revolution that was going on. Like he put an end to it and brought about reforms that created him.
Going into French Revolution over here will go beyond the scope. Okay, the question is specifically talking about his empire did not last, but his reforms did. Okay, so in one sentence we can say that although Napoleon is remembered as a military genius and empire builder, okay, but all his achievements on the battlefield withered away after Battle of Waterloo. But his reforms and institutions that he built served not only France but several other countries later. Essence क्या है? Comparison. Okay, his empire does not last, but his reforms and institutions they do. Okay, so that is what the question is demanding. Then we go into the body of the answer. Body में हम briefly बताएंगे about Napoleon's, very briefly we'll talk about Napoleon's achievements and his empire building. Very briefly we'll say that. Napoleon was able to defeat all major powers of Europe except Britain एक तरफ, और रशिया को हराया नहीं था, बट रशिया को फोर्सफुल फ्रेंडशिप एक्सेप्ट करवाई थी. All of Europe was under his control. Either he was directly ruling, or people associated with him were ruling, और the third thing was the ruler was his ally. ये 3 सिचुएशंस थी कॉन्टिनेंटल यूरोप में. फ्रांस पे देखिए वो खुद रूलर है. स्पेन के ऊपर में कभी वो खुद रूलर था, कभी उसके सौतेले बेटे को बना दिया, सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. ठीक है. इटली का वो खुद अपने आप को राजा डिक्लेयर करता है, किंग ऑफ इटली. ऑस्ट्रिया इज अ फ्रेंड. सो ऑलमोस्ट द होल ऑफ यूरोप इज अंडर नेपोलियंस कंट्रोल. बट एट द एंड ऑफ वाटरलू हिज एम्पायर इज गोइंग टू विदर अवे. ठीक है. पुरानी जो व्यवस्था थी वो पुरानी सिस्टम फिर से आ जाती है. पुरानी सिस्टम को हम क्या बोलते हैं यहां पर में? मेटरनिक सिस्टम. Austria's minister Metternich, who was instrumental in defeating Napoleon, he brought back the old system. Same old empires, everything were brought back at the end of Waterloo. But Napoleon's reforms, they endured. What were the reforms that Napoleon implemented? क्या क्या reforms implement की? अब यहां पर हमको कुछ points specifically बताने होंगे. First point in that, we can talk about the Napoleonic Code. Can I write it? Napoleonic Code. Napoleonic Code. Keyword, I'll tell you what the essence is. You'll get the full model answer also, don't worry. Napoleonic Code में नेपोलियन ने सारे ही एम्पायर में एक सिंगल एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव लॉ या गवर्नेंस सिस्टम इंप्लीमेंट करवाया था. ठीक है. He made a codification of all the laws and systems of governance that were to be implemented, and across his empire he implemented that code. पहले क्या होता था medieval times में? There used to be a lot of variation based on region, ritual, customs, etc., etc., and that was very complicated to administer. So Napoleon removed that old system and instead he brought about a unified system of governance across his entire empire. आज देखिए हम कितने सारे कोड्स यूज करते हैं. इनफैक्ट 19th सेंचुरी से ही ब्रिटिशर्स ने हमारे यहां पर में इंडियन पीनल कोड इंप्लीमेंट किया 1860 as early as that. Where has all this codification system What was IPC or now BNS? We have definition of a crime, punishment of a crime, identified with a number. Okay, section so and so, section so and so, so on and so forth. Okay, who is the progenitor of this system? Napoleon and his code. So he implemented that for administrative unification, efficiency, and also equality. Okay? Earlier there were systems based on privileges. Napoleon वो सब खत्म कर देता है. Everybody is equal before the law, and this is the type of governance that we are going to have. Has it not endured beyond Napoleon? Codification system. We are continuing to use it in our times also. So किसने originate किया था इसको? Napoleon ने originate किया था. So that is his biggest reform, Napoleonic Code. Second reform that he implemented was in terms of educational institutions. Educational institutions. Napoleon created several new universities, colleges, and training institutions, and therein he implemented a standard curricula. Okay. So आज हम बात कर रहे हैं ना, one nation, one syllabus, so on and so forth, right? So ये सारे systems का progenitor कौन है? Again, Napoleon has given this idea. He was the person who understood the importance of education in controlling people's minds. Okay, so through syllabus, he imbibed the idea of French nationalism in the youth. French जो youth हैं, they should think like how Napoleon thinks. For that reason, he used the curricula, syllabus, so that his control will be very strong on the people. Number 2, he did this. Okay. Number 3, Napoleon knew that without defeating Britain, उसकी विक्ट्री कभी कंप्लीट नहीं हो सकती, और ब्रिटेन को तब तक नहीं हराया जा सकता जब तक फ्रांस इंडस्ट्रियलाइज ना हो. So Napoleon implemented many reforms for promoting industrial revolution in France. Reforms for industrial revolution. Third point है, पहला क्या देखा हमने? कोड देखा. We spoke about control over institutions. Third is industrial revolution. What all did he do in industrial revolution? Industrial revolution, yes. Nationalization of many resources. He gave a boost to banking and financial activities. Okay. He understood the importance of railways, and he started out, although it did not, it will take some time for France to build it up, but the initiative was done by Napoleon. Fourth, he attracted investors to come and invest there in France in industrial revolution. ये सब क्या है? Evidences हैं. पहली चीज मैंने आपको क्या दी? पर्सपेक्टिव. कौन सा रिफॉर्म था? इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन का रिफॉर्म. और फिर हम आगे जो बता रहे हैं, व्हाट इज दैट? दैट इज एविडेंस टू सपोर्ट. फोर पॉइंट्स हो गए. आफ्टर दिस, नेपोलियन रिकॉग्नाइज्ड मेरिट. एक पर्सपेक्टिव याद रखिएगा, मेरिट. नेपोलियन से पहले, बिफोर नेपोलियन, recognition was based only on birth. Yes, आप अगर nobility से belong करते हैं तो ही आपको recognition मिलता था. Common people did not have any recognition from the state. Now Napoleon knew the value of merit like nobody else, क्योंकि वो खुद merit के दम पे आया था ना ऊपर, and he wanted the best men to serve the nation. So for that reason he recognized merit. कैसे किया उसने? He appointed prefects. ठीक है. He opened up government service through open competition. 2. Number 3, जैसे हमारे यहाँ पर में पद्मा अवार्ड सिस्टम है. Okay. Napoleon also created a Legion d'Honneur for recognition of special talent of different people. So what is all of this? This is recognition of merit that he has carried out. Now, although Napoleon's empire withered away, but these ideas, they continued. नेपोलियन के इंडस्ट्रियल रिफॉर्म्स कंटिन्यू होंगे और 1870 के बाद में फ्रांस एक मेजर इंडस्ट्रियल पावर बनेगा. मेरिट का आइडिया जो है फ्रांस के अंदर में एक्सेप्ट हुआ. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल मोनार्की रही फ्रांस के अंदर में ऑन एंड ऑफ. ठीक है. यस, नेपोलियन द थर्ड आएगा, बट ऑन एंड ऑफ द पावर वाज curtailed and controlled. So many of these points that he instituted, they continued even after Napoleon had died. Okay. So can we agree with this idea? All agree with this? Yes, no, can't say? Yes. Okay. Chaliye, next question. The UN was established. The UN was established to provide a more effective successor to League of Nations in peacefully resolving international conflicts. How is the UN better than its predecessor? How is the UN better than its predecessor? So what is the scope over here? Difference. Excellent. Okay. The question is not about league. The question is not about UN in isolation. Yes, it's a comparison based question. ठीक है? तो ये सिंपल है. तो अब क्या क्या पॉइंट्स हम इसमें बोल सकते हैं? What all ideas can we talk about in comparison? What all points can we say? How is UN better than League of Nations? Okay. Order में थोड़ा later आएगा, but yes, very important point. UN has more better enforcement. कैसे? UN can use peacekeeping forces. UN can use sanctions. It can use armed intervention. Okay. UN, if required, UN forces can actually fight a war also. कोरिया में हमने देखा था. ठीक है. एक पीस कीपिंग डिफरेंट है. पीस कीपिंग में उनके पास में मैंडेट लड़ने का नहीं होता है. दे आर जस्ट देयर टू keep the two sides away. Okay, but they can actually fight in a conflict also if required. Inclusive representation, especially एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कंट्री है जो लीग में नहीं था, यूएन में है. यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स ऑफ अमेरिका. लीग ऑफ नेशंस वाज प्रपोज्ड बाय यूएसए. वुड्रो विल्सन ने, President Wilson had proposed in his 14 points, but USA did not join. Anybody knows why? USA did not join League of Nations. Reason behind that was Treaty of Versailles, जो हमने first question देखा था. तो Treaty of Versailles के वक्त में France was hell-bent on taking revenge from Germany. 1870 में Bismarck had invaded France, and Bismarck ने कैसर विलियम की जो ताजपोशी थी, उसका जो वो कोरोनेशन था, he had done it in Palace of Versailles. So he wanted to kind of humiliate the French people, and the French people had not forgotten that. So they wanted to exact that revenge. तो जब मौका मिला वर्ल्ड वॉर एंड में, वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 के एंड में, so they got a treaty like Treaty of Versailles signed by Germany. USA was against this. USA felt that it is taking things way too far, but France was wanting it and Britain was also supporting. That's why the treaty was signed. तो USA ने कहा कि भैया हम नहीं ज्वाइन करेंगे फिर League of Nations. So USA is a member. Today USA contributes 1/4 of UN का budget. 25% of UN budget comes from USA. And that is why Donald Trump keeps on threatening, na? UN is a bloated organization. It's very inefficient. We are going to stop our funding. And you never know, when he'll start to, scale down also. Okay? So USA का involvement, more representative. 193 countries UN के members हैं. League के वक्त में. US hater के लिए, let's say. Yes.
It was unbiased. UN was unbiased. Like, the League of Nations is biased towards countries which were victorious.
UN is also in some ways. Relatively, yes, you can say. It's more fair. But UN के अंदर में भी P5 क्या है? ठीक है ना? So they still have the advantage. World War II में France was something different. Today France is not even a pale shadow of what it used to be. But still it has, veto power. Britain is also in a very bad shape. But, it continues to have that. Okay. Broader scope of activities. League of Nations was only about conflicts. UN is not just about conflict prevention or stopping conflicts. It is also about many developmental activities. Many things UN does. So League of Nations had very few specialized agencies. UN has many specialized agencies. What else can we say? Okay, fine. No conflict of that scale took place. Yes. Yes. Of that scale, we can definitely say. Yes. Point is granted. Yes. Decision making of league was based on consensus. Means all had to agree. Whereas UN में, what is the system? General Assembly में we have system based on simple majority, and also we have more complicated majorities for some special cases. So just imagine it will be so difficult to get a decision in UN if we have consensus based decision making. मतलब हर कंट्री को, अंगोला को, इथियोपिया को, सभी को वेटो पावर मिल जाएगा. Got the point? तो वो लीग का प्रॉब्लम था. यहां पर में वो प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. लीग ऑफ नेशंस used to meet only once in a year. It could not meet more often. UN के अंदर में, yes, they meet once in a year, but they can meet more often if they so wish. लीग में ये प्रोविजन नहीं था. So every year September we have the meeting in UN, but otherwise also they can call. जैसे इराक वॉर जब हुआ था, तो इराक वॉर USA and UK were hellbent on going for that war, and all the other countries were opposing. So a special session of UN had been called. जनरल असेंबली में उसके खिलाफ भी वोट हुआ, बट दे वेंट अहेड. ओके, बट मीटिंग बुलाई जा सकती है. ठीक है. डू वी हैव एम्पल पॉइंट्स? 8 to 10 points in fact. Clear? League versus UN. Lastly, we'll give a concluding note for this answer. What can we say in conclusion? Some unique touch that you can give? Okay, ठीक है. That is one thing. I'm looking for something more. Excellent. You are using a quote from? Yes, this was a quote. Narendra Modi had said this. ठीक है. It is a very smart thing to do. Okay? It's a very smart thing to do. In essence, he has captured the entire thing. Okay? Although comparatively, definitely United Nations is more successful, but 21st century के जो problems है, they are more complex, and for that we need a reformed United Nations. So we have been demanding governance reform. तो यहाँ पर मैं लास्ट में आकर के आपने acknowledge भी किया उस चीज को, reinforce भी किया. At the same time, you have also given a contemporary touch also to your answer. Okay, will that fetch that half a mark more? Is that a better conclusion? Okay, you were halfway there. आपने भी अच्छा लिखा था, but वो एक final flourish अगर आ जाए तो it will be even better. Okay? Easy, simple, लिख सकते हैं हम. Okay, okay, good. चलिए, next after this, next question is, what do you understand by the term apartheid? How did this practice come to an end in South Africa? Bring out the role played by Nelson Mandela in this struggle. What do you understand by the term apartheid? What was apartheid? That's the keyword. Apartheid was a system of racial segregation practiced in 19th and 20th century South Africa, whereby whites, black, colored people, Asians, and Indians, they were segregated in terms of residences and workplaces. Okay. Furthermore, there were also stringent restrictions on social interactions, including marriages between these racial groups. You understand this? Okay. So we have explained what? We have explained the idea of apartheid. Remember 150 words है, तो हमारे पास scope limited है, 3 parts हैं question के अंदर में. How did this idea come to an end? How did system of apartheid come to an end? Now, naturally, this was a discriminatory system that put people of color at a disadvantage and perpetuated the hegemony of the white people of South Africa. Hence, African National Congress, ANC की हम बात कर सकते हैं यहाँ पर में, African National Congress and many other organizations in South Africa and all over Africa, they raised their voice against this issue. Okay? They used means that were both peaceful and violent to oppose the apartheid regime. Nelson Mandela was also a part of this uprising against the apartheid regime. उनकी एक organization भी है. He had carried about sabotage. He was a revolutionary kind of a fighter. He had carried out some sabotage related activities for which he was arrested and then jailed for 23 long years. There was constant resistance inside South Africa and international pressure on the South African government to end this regime. For example, भारत का हम example दे सकते हैं. India had ended diplomatic contact with South Africa over the issue of apartheid, and so had many other countries of the world. United Nations had put a lot of pressure. Sporting organizations like ICC had also, prevented South Africa from participating in sporting activities. And because of this, cumulatively, South African economy was suffering. And therefore, in 1989, F.D. Klerk, the then president of South Africa, he accepted that this is untenable and he prepared the transition towards a black majority rule of South Africa. 1990, Nelson Mandela, who had by then become the main figure, national figurehead of this movement, he was released, and then in the subsequent election, he became the president of South Africa. ठीक है? नेल्सन मंडेला प्रेसिडेंट बनने के बाद में क्या करते हैं? नेल्सन मंडेला established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC. ये नहीं लिखा है तो याद रखिएगा इसको. Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, to ensure two things. To ensure two things. कौन सी दो चीजें चाहिए थी उनको? एक, closure for the colored people. Closure for the colored people of South Africa. And second thing was closure for colored people of South Africa. And second thing was preventing South Africa from descending into chaos. अब मैं टीआरसी क्या है एक्सप्लेन करता हूं ब्रीफली. इट्स अ वेरी गुड केस स्टडी फॉर एसए ऑल्सो. Now, what had happened in TRC? For many decades, the black people and others also had suffered. Nelson Mandela को ये डर था that like other African countries, South Africa will also see cycle of violence and counter-violence, and it will land into a big mess. He did not want that. But at the same time, he also wanted that there should be some kind of a justice, closure for the black people, especially. तो उन्होंने ये टीआरसी की कंसेप्ट लाई. टीआरसी में क्या होता था? टीआरसी में the black people could bring their complaints before the commission, and the white people who had done those wrong things, they were present over there. They had to accept and apologize for what they had done. So the black people bring their grudges and the white people accept and apologize, and no punishment. We close the story there itself. जिसके साथ अन्याय होता है उसके अंदर वो दर्द, जैसे भारत में भी अगर हम देखें कई सारे, रिसेंटली कश्मीरी पंडित पर जब वो मूवी आई थी तो एक जज ने ये रिमार्क किया था दैट देयर शुड बी समथिंग लाइक अ टीआरसी इन इंडिया आल्सो. ओके, सो व्हेन your pain is heard and the other side accepts and apologizes, you don't necessarily want that person to suffer now, but you want that acceptance, closure. Okay, so TRC was a very beautiful model that gave the sense of closure and also prevented violence. Okay, Nelson Mandela became president and led South Africa then subsequently to further heights. एक और ऐसे के लिए टर्म याद रखिएगा. नेल्सन मंडेला इज अ ग्रेट केस स्टडी फॉर ऐसे. He gave the concept of rainbow nation. Concept of rainbow nation. What was rainbow nation? So South Africa is not just about white people or black people. Okay, it is about people of all different races. और उसको दर्शाने के लिए एक बड़ी अच्छी कंसेप्ट उन्होंने दी, कंसेप्ट ऑफ रेनबो नेशन. Do you understand that? Nation of all different colors. There's a very nice movie if you're interested. The name of the movie is Invictus. Invictus, if you like watching movies like me, again comes very handy for essay also. Invictus नाम की एक पोयम है, कभी पढ़िएगा पोयम उसको. ये पोयम, it was the favorite poem of Nelson Mandela, and he used to read that poem a lot in that prison when he was on that island, and that gave him a lot of strength. और उसी के नाम से ये मूवी भी है, Invictus. It's a very beautiful movie. When he becomes the president of South Africa, Rugby World Cup was going on, and South Africa में rugby is like what cricket is to India. Okay, so Nelson Mandela used that as an opportunity to integrate all different races in South Africa. Team final में जब पहुंची, and white people particularly, they were very passionate about rugby. White people were fearful कि अब Nelson, a black man who has suffered in prison, अब ये president है, अब हमारे साथ में violence होगा. So Nelson Mandela, he went to the final of that rugby match wearing the team's jersey, in a way signaling to the white people and also all others that we are one nation. It's a very beautiful case study that can come in handy. Okay, so sufficient points for this answer. What is apartheid? How did it end? And what is the contribution of Nelson Mandela? 7-8 points हो रहे हैं हमारे इसमें. Clear? Okay. We'll take one more question. Okay. What do you understand by the term Arab nationalism, and what role did Colonel Nasser of Egypt play in strengthening it? What do you understand by the term Arab nationalism? Okay, yes, close, लेकिन थोड़ा और precise चाहिए हमको. What is the idea of Arab nationalism? Political among Arab nations based on shared language. Okay, good way of putting it. Against colonialism. Okay, ठीक है. Fair enough, but थोड़ा सा और crisply बस draft करना होगा. What is Arab nationalism? Arab nationalism was a 20th century political idea that presented the view that Arabic-speaking people belong to one nation. ठीक है, belong to one nation. अब यहाँ पर मैं एक थोड़ा सा subtle concept है, इसको थोड़ा वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री में बहुत ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस है, इसलिए मैं स्ट्रेस करके आगे बढ़ूंगा. सी बिफोर द मॉडर्न टाइम्स वी हैड द सिस्टम ऑफ एम्पायर्स. मुगल एम्पायर, रोमन तो एंशिएंट में हो गया, बट या ऑटोमन एम्पायर, वी हैड द रशियन एम्पायर, सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. नाउ इन दिस एम्पायर there used to be many different type of ethnicities, different types of people, and they all were ruled by one common emperor. Okay, they did not find anything wrong with a distant Ottoman Khalifa ruling over them. Just imagine Turkey का जो खलीफा है, Ottoman Khalifa, he's sitting in Istanbul, and his empire is spread not just in Asia Minor, but entire Levant, entire North Africa, and some parts of East Europe also. 3 continents पर Ottoman Khalifa is ruling. So it was very normal for people to live in that kind of a political system. लेकिन जब हम 17th 18th सेंचुरी में आते हैं, एनलाइटनमेंट के चलते नए पॉलिटिकल आइडियाज इंट्रोड्यूस होने लगते हैं, और 18th सेंचुरी में खास तौर पे आइडिया ऑफ नेशन एंड नेशनलिज्म स्टार्ट्स टू बिकम स्ट्रॉन्ग. व्हाट इज मेंट बाय नेशन? Nation is a group of people who have some common identity marker. What is a nation? A group of people who have some common identity marker. ठीक है? Nationalism क्या है फिर? Nationalism is feeling of oneness in this nation. ठीक है? Feeling of oneness. So nation is a group of people with common identity marker, and nationalism is feeling of oneness in that group. यूरोप के अंदर में पहले तो अमेरिका में हो चुका था रेवोल्यूशन, बट कॉन्टिनेंटल यूरोप में जब फ्रांस में रेवोल्यूशन हुआ, तो दिस आइडिया ऑफ फ्रेंच नेशनलिज्म स्टार्टेड टू एनिमेट द होल ऑफ यूरोप. फ्रेंच नेशनलिज्म से इंस्पायर होकर के हम देखेंगे कि ग्रीक नेशनलिज्म राइज होगा, पोलिश नेशनलिज्म राइज होगा, एंड ऑल ऑफ दीज ग्रुप्स ऑफ पीपल started to fight against their respective rulers. ये 18th century यूरोप की सारी हिस्ट्री हम देखते हैं. 19th सेंचुरी में ये पॉलिटिकल आइडिया आ जाता है इन दी एशिया एंड अफ्रीका. ओके, द अरब्स who were then ruled by the Ottoman Khalifa, they also start to feel like we, Indians felt, why should we be ruled by a distant ruler? We should have our own political future destiny in our own hands. So Arabs के अंदर में जब ये आइडिया आता है, स्पेशली 20th सेंचुरी के अंदर में, that is the rise of Arab nationalism. World over, we'll see that end of 19th century, early 20th century, the idea of nationalism is going to start to peak. चाइना में पहला रेवोल्यूशन कब आया? 1911 में. नॉट अ कोइंसिडेंस. ठीक है. भारत में एक्सट्रीमिस्ट फेज वगैरह की शुरुआत कहां होती है? एक्सट्रीमिस्ट फेज टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ 19th सेंचुरी. वी सी दैट रेवोल्यूशनरी नेशनलिज्म कब दिखता है? उसी पॉइंट पे दिखता है. ठीक है. और वैसा ही कुछ हमको अरब नेशनलिज्म के अंदर में भी देखने मिलेगा. यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस? Clear everyone? Okay. So what is Arab nationalism? The idea or feeling that the Arabic speaking people are one nation. It extols their culture, civilization, values, etc. etc. जैसे नेशनलिज्म में होता है. ठीक है. बात समझ में आई आपके? ओके. जब नेशनलिज्म जाग जाता है तो उसके बाद नेक्स्ट स्टेप क्या होता है? डिमांड फॉर नेशन स्टेट. ठीक है. 3 स्टेप्स. नेशन क्रिएट हुआ है कॉमन मार्कर से. उसके बाद नेक्स्ट स्टेप अनलॉक होता है फीलिंग ऑफ वननेस. जैसे फ्रेंच लोगों को लगा हम एक हैं, पोलिश लोगों को लगा, ग्रीक लोगों को लगा, अगली सेंचुरी में दूसरों को लगने लगता है. सो फीलिंग ऑफ नेशनलिज्म बिकम्स स्ट्रॉन्ग. व्हेन फीलिंग ऑफ नेशनलिज्म बिकम्स स्ट्रॉन्ग, नेक्स्ट स्टेप इज अनलॉक्ड. इट्स लाइक अ गेम. एंड नेक्स्ट स्टेप इज वी वांट टू हैव अ नेशन स्टेट ऑफ आवर ओन. तो क्या करना पड़ेगा? वील हैव टू फाइट अगेंस्ट आवर ओवरलॉर्ड्स. जो भी हमारे ऊपर रूल कर रहा है उसके खिलाफ फाइट करना पड़ेगा. एंड हु वाज रूलिंग ओवर द अरब्स एट दैट टाइम? इट वाज द ऑटोमन्स. अब उनकी एथनिसिटी डिफरेंट है, दे आर टर्किश पीपल. ठीक है. सो द अरब्स विल राइज अप अगेंस्ट हुम? अगेंस्ट द ऑटोमन्स इन वर्ल्ड वॉर 1. वर्ल्ड वॉर 1 में ब्रिटिश इंस्टिगेटेड द अरब्स टू फाइट अगेंस्ट देयर ऑटोमन रूलर. थोड़ा कंटेक्स्ट, क्योंकि मुझे ये बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग लगता है जियो पॉलिटिक्स, तो मैं जस्ट थोड़ा बैकग्राउंड बता के चल रहा हूं. जर्मनी में द जर्मन रूलर काइसर विलियम, he had befriended the Ottoman Khalifa, Ottoman ruler. Okay, he was planning to build Berlin-Baghdad railway also. Britain felt कि ये तो बहुत dangerous काम हो रहा है. Okay, if Berlin gets Germany, that is gets access to West Asia, तो फिर Arabian Sea is not far from there. Okay, if Arabian Sea is not far from there, then India is not far from there. Okay, and British, थोड़ा मैं मजाक में बोलता हूँ इस चीज को. The British rulers, they had a approach like that of a husband who does domestic violence at home but is very possessive outside. Okay, that was the kind of attitude that Britain had towards India, the crown jewel. Okay, very abusive at home but very protective outside. So when Germany was coming close in this direction, so what happened? They started to instigate Arabs inside of the Ottoman rule so that they will fight against the Khalifa. There's a very beautiful film, if you have interest, Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia. He's a real character, okay, a British captain who was sent with this secret mission in the Arab lands to basically instigate whom? To instigate these Arab tribes to fight against the Ottoman ruler. और सब कुछ प्रॉमिस किया कि हम आपको मिलिट्री सपोर्ट देंगे, ट्रेनिंग देंगे, ये सब देंगे. यू हैव टू राइज एंड फाइट अगेंस्ट द ऑटोमन रूलर. And the Arabs did rise up and they fought against the Ottoman Turks. And that became a major cause for defeat of Ottoman ruler and of course the coalition. Clear everyone up to this point? इसके बदले में उनको क्या मिला? What did they get in return? The Arabs. First thing, Balfour Declaration of 1917. Write down this point, Balfour Declaration of 1917. What did this Balfour Declaration say? It promised a Jewish homeland in the area of Palestine. This is the first political commitment from the west for Israel. ठीक है, सो ये पहला एक तरीके से अरब्स के पर्सपेक्टिव से दिस वाज लाइक अ धोखा, बैकस्टैबिंग फ्रॉम द वेस्टर्न पावर्स. One. Number two, at the end of World War One, mandate systems were created. Right on that point. Mandate systems were created. Mandate systems. Mandate systems. Now, what were the mandate systems? पैलेस्टाइन का मैंडेट क्रिएट हुआ, सीरिया का मैंडेट क्रिएट हुआ, इराक का मैंडेट क्रिएट हुआ. मैंडेट में क्या था? These areas were going to be administered by Britain and France. So Palestine was to be under Britain, Syria was to be under France. So what did the Arabs feel about this? Okay, on one side we have this Arab nationalism, we are one people, we want to have our own nation state. The British were instigating us, and after fighting for them, basically, what have we got? We have got declaration for Israel, we've got mandate system, means we don't have independence, and the Britishers are deciding who is going to rule where. So this again gave another big boost or fillip to Arab nationalism. Clear now? Background, pura history? Yes, no, can't say. Okay. Okay. After this comes World War II, an entire process of decolonization. Okay. Decolonization के अंदर में many of these areas they started to gain independence. Okay. Technically, Iraq or Egypt, they were independent, but they were still being controlled by whom? By the Western powers. और ऐसे इसमें rise होता है नासिर का. ठीक है. General Nasser, he did a coup. Coup किया, as in he transferred the power forcefully from the king of Egypt into his own hands, and he was now in control of Egypt. ठीक है. Egypt was particularly important for Western powers. Can you tell me the reason why? Excellent. 1870 Suez Canal बन गया था, and this canal was created by 3 entities. Okay, मैं सिर्फ आंसर तक लिमिट नहीं रख रहा हूं, आपको थोड़ा पेरिफेरल चीजें भी बता रहा हूं. 3 entities. Who were they? Britain, France, and the ruler of Egypt. ठीक है. A company was created, corporation was created, and each of these people had shareholding over there. इस अरेंजमेंट में ब्रिटेन के पास अधिकार था अपने ट्रूप्स को वहां पर मेंटेन करने का, टू प्रोटेक्ट द सुएज कैनाल. ठीक है. सो ब्रिटिश ट्रूप्स वर देयर ऑन इजिप्शियन सॉइल टू गार्ड द सुएज कैनाल. जस्ट इमेजिन द इंपॉर्टेंस. यूरोप और भारत का जो डिस्टेंस था, it used to be 20,000 nautical miles. Suez Canal brought that down to 8,000 nautical miles. It used to take 6 months to reach, Europe from India earlier, and that time substantially collapsed because of Suez Canal. So Britain did not want to give up. आज भी देखिए डिएगो गार्सिया और कहां-कहां ये लोग के आइलैंड्स और कंट्रोल्स हैं. So Suez Canal जैसा एरिया they never wanted to give up. Nasser said, we Arab people are one nation and we don't want any kind of Western influence in our area, and let's start with Suez Canal. He said, I am not going to renew the treaty signed which allowed Britain to maintain troops for protection of Suez Canal. यहाँ से पहले मराठी में बोलते हैं ना ठिनगी पड़ ली. This started his conflict. Britain said, no, we want to have protection over the Suez Canal. He started to then warm up more to the other side, the communist bloc. He signed deals with USSR. He signed military treaty with Czechoslovakia and started to antagonize USA also. America ने धमकी दी फिर इजिप्ट को, and America told that if you are going to do all this business, then we are not going to fund the Aswan Dam that was being created at that time in Egypt. Aswan Dam का fund freeze कर दिया, and in response, Nasser said, okay, if you don't want to give us funds, we don't need your funds. What are we doing? We are going to nationalize the Suez Canal. So he took complete control of Suez Canal and abolished that company which was having, in business interest in the canal. ठीक है. This led to war between Egypt on one side and Britain, France and Israel on the other side. ठीक है. इस वॉर में ब्रिटेन, फ्रांस और इसराइल मिलिटरीली तो they had some victories as such because Egypt could not match their power, but politically everybody sided with Egypt. United Nations, India also at that time supported Egypt. USA also supported Egypt and told UK, USA very sternly told UK that you can't do this shady business now. अब इस एरिया में एक नया दादा आ चुका है. You were a yesteryear's power. अब जो भी करोगे हमसे पूछ के करोगे. यूके ने बताया नहीं था. जब ये वॉर किया था तो यूएसए वाज नॉट केप्ट इन द नो ऑफ इट एंड अमेरिकन प्रेसिडेंट वाज ऑफेंडेड. So this was a great political victory. So this is Arab nationalism started by Nasser. Apart from this, a few more points we can write from Nasser. Nasser supported Algeria. Algeria कहाँ है पता है आपको? नॉर्थ अफ्रीका. It was ruled by whom? France. और फ्रांस के अंदर में एक जस्ट साइड नोट पे जस्ट बता रहा हूं आपको, अल्जीरिया का एरिया ऐसे रूल होता था जैसे इट इज फ्रांस का ही टेरिटरी. इट वाज नॉट एज इफ इट्स अ कॉलोनी. सो पर्सन इन अल्जीरिया टेक्निकली हैड द सेम राइट्स उनके हिसाब से एज अ फ्रेंच सिटीजन ओवर देयर विल हैव. सो फ्रांस सेड दिस इज नॉट अ कॉलोनी, व्हाई शुड वी गिव अप? बस उस तरफ है ना समंदर के, तो ये हम कंटिग्यूअस ही है. दैट वाज फ्रांस का एटीट्यूड. बट अल्जीरियन पीपल दे वर फाइटिंग फॉर देयर फ्रीडम and Nasser supported their cause. Ultimately, France had to go back from there also. Okay. Nasser prevented, last point in this, Nasser prevented the success of Baghdad Pact. Okay, Baghdad Pact. Baghdad Pact क्या था? ब्रिटेन और यूएसए इन सभी न्यूली इंडिपेंडेंट एरियाज में कोल्ड वॉर का अपना स्ट्रक्चर फैला रहे थे. And Baghdad Pact was a pact of those countries which had aligned with Western powers. ठीक है. बाद में वो सेंटो कहलाएगा, जस्ट सो दैट यू डोंट गेट कंफ्यूज्ड. बगदाद पैक्ट का जो रूलर, इराक का जो रूलर था, वहां पर में सत्ता बदल गई एंड इराक वॉकड आउट ऑफ दैट पैक्ट. इसलिए फिर उसको बगदाद पैक्ट बोलना लॉजिकल नहीं था. दैट्स व्हाई लेटर इट विल बी कॉल्ड एज सेंटो. बट नासिर वेरी vehemently opposed the Baghdad Pact and many Arab countries did not join it also. Subsequently, Nasser also became part of non-alignment movement and that further gave fillip to the Arab nationalism. Okay, so we have seen three things. What is the Arab nationalism? We have seen how it emerges in the 20th century and how Nasser became its main contributor. After death of Nasser, the entire idea dissipated. Internally ही बहुत conflicts थे, divide and rule था, और बहुत strategically Western powers ने Arab, आप लोग सोचते होंगे ना कि why there is so much conflict in West Asia, why there is no democracy in West Asia as such. The reason behind that is all this geopolitics of Western powers. They have imposed such rulers over there who are dependent on America for their own safety and security, for their continued rule. अभी आज भी अगर आप latest conflict देखेंगे, you see what is happening in Palestine. Okay, despite all of that, you see all the major Arab rulers, they are not able to do or say anything. Okay, they are, you can literally say they are normalizing with Israel. They have, जिन्होंने normalize नहीं भी किया, उनके secret relations already Israel के साथ में है. How is that possible that on one side you have such conflict and on the other side you have Arab rulers who are so close to Israel? The reason behind all of that is the politics of last century. ठीक है? Fine. Okay. I don't know if they have printed sufficient copies of model answers. Even if not, you'll get the model answers on the Telegram channel, the link that I had shown over there today itself. Do review those model answers. And if you have written or if you're going to write a few answers in due course of time and would like to connect with me for sharing those answers, I'll be more than happy to review them for you. At least try to write a few, maybe 2, 3 at least, if not more, and try to show them to me. Please remember, at this stage, it's not about content, it's about skill. ठीक है? Open book, I don't mind. But one sitting में आप लिख करके फिर वो आप assess करने के लिए अपने mentors, teachers जिससे भी आप करवाएं, वो करवाएंगे. बहुत दफा क्या होता है ना, बच्चे लिखते इसलिए नहीं है, they think that when I complete my studies, then I will write. That day never dawns. Don't make that mistake. Got my point? Okay, ठीक है. I'll close it over here since you've been here for some time now, from 11 o'clock. If you have any doubts and queries about our discussion about the model answers, please feel free to reach me. I'll share my number also. You can jot that down. You can send on WhatsApp also if you write some answers. 7264 9194 82. 7264919482. My name is Jawad Qazi. All right, sure. All the best. Take care, all of you. Yeah. Telegram channel for this PDF, I'll give the scanner over here. You can scan this and join the Telegram channel. You have your world history course. Hmm. Hmm. Almost everything is there, barring one or two that you mentioned. Everything is there. And you can follow my personal channel also. It's anyways, I'll share the link of that with you. I'll share my personal channel also. All right. Sherry, thank you so much. See you in next session. Next week is geography. So Kaustubh sir will be engaging that session, 26th of April, 11 a.m. onwards. Okay, we'll call it a day here for today.